You are listening to the Zenith transmissions, channeled dialogues exploring consciousness, mutation, and the unfolding human story.
Transmission 3, February 6th, 2024, 12:21 p.m. Settling in, relax and feel your body begin to sink, clearing your mind of any thoughts of the day, relaxing the body completely, breathing deeply in and out the nose, allowing the belly to rise and fall, bringing your awareness to that point between the eyebrows, setting your intention to reach that highest source of information and wisdom. Relax and breathe, and whenever you're ready, we will begin. Can you describe the hierarchy of control?
The hierarchy of control is the perception of our separate nested sources. In all things, we see this same picture: the oak tree inside of the seed, the layers of energy outside of the body, the umbrella of higher powers such as archangel, angel, clergy, layman, and so on. These are just bigger containers and bigger containers. When we fail to enact things for our highest good, sometimes the next layer will step in and set into play our limitation. Our government is set up this way as well, but in a flawed reflection of it. The individual is governed by their smaller bodies, like work, city officials, police and state officials, federal officials, and so on. We also typically willingly put ourselves into these limitations or systems of control, such as when we align with a group or an organization. In nature, in our bodies, in our societies, and in our universe, there is always a seed within a fruit, within a tree, within a seed, within, and so on. We can't escape these spheres and layers in this form, as waves of light and sound play by these same rules. We will always find the smaller and larger, more expanded form of cells and energy, and when we regulate on the most minute level, the upper levels do not have to step in. But when we choose not to embrace sovereignty, choosing our own limitations to play with, often higher levels must step in and put them into place for us. What we do can affect many ripples down or many ripples up. So even if we choose self-imposed limitations, if these are not in the best interest of our body, our soul, the souls we govern, or the souls that govern us, we might see these limits removed, resisted, or acted upon by those whom we govern or those who govern us.
Why do we experience pain?
Pain is a flag. So when there's a fault line or a weak point in a system or an environment, when it erupts, we are able to pinpoint the source of that weakness or the fault. Pain shows us these fault lines or weaknesses in ourselves. They show us where we have missed a message that our body is trying to show us, or that our soul needs to examine and notice patterns. Hopefully, pain forces us to look at those fault lines before a disaster occurs, but they themselves are not the issue to be solved, simply the markers to follow.
When we hear the message, will the pain go away?
Sometimes we can hear a message and make no change, and then the message comes back in the same way it would if someone tells us something we are doing is hurting them, and we hear them but don't change. It depends what the message is and what the theme is that is running. If we correct the need for the message, then yes, we can alleviate the messenger. But if we identify the fault line and do nothing to reinforce or stabilize ourselves against it, then we have only become aware of the situation, but not mediated anything surrounding it. We might be aware that we shouldn't eat or do something, but if we keep right on in the same patterns that we were playing into, then that fault line is still there. We just know it's there. Notice the patterns of how the same issue is playing out in multiple spheres of that person's life. Again, this is the same analogy of the nesting dolls. If one cell has an issue, then this usually plays out in an organ system of the body, which usually plays out in a relationship dynamic in the emotional body, which usually plays out in the physical world or environment of the person. It is reflected in multiple ways and surrounding the spheres of life that that person is in and made of.
How can we reduce headaches and joint pain?
Both are showing the same story of inflammation. Headaches are inflammation and joint pain is inflammation, so you would look at what other areas of inflammation are showing up in their life. What are the qualities of inflammation? Swelling is usually involved, heat is usually involved, and even so, these two symptoms are part of a cluster of symptoms that can often show a cold and dry imbalance. Why would you think that that might be? The question that you ask points back to a system of limitations and forced limitations. When a body is out of balance and too cold, if a person does not adequately listen to that message and warm itself, the body produces heat in the form of inflammation. Cold constricts, which then leads to tension. That tension leads to inflammation, which is the body helping heat itself. Same with shivering, or in the channel, coughing. It generates heat circulation, which is offsetting the imbalance, but often in unpleasant ways. Restriction and constriction can lead to numbness. If the body is trying to be kind and numb you to hurtful emotion, it is providing its form of balancing by numbing and cooling and constricting. If the reason is emotional numbing, then the warmth should be added to the emotions and can also be added on the layer of the physical plane as well through body warming. But when an emotion is uncomfortable, we constrict and restrict against it. This causes pain, which in turn the body attempts to numb. If we are able to feel emotion without resistance to the emotion and allow it to flow through, the act of crying or other emotional releases also warm the body. Then we don't hold on to that resistance and the need to self-numb or be forced to numb. Are there any emotions you have trouble accessing?
Grief?
You have trouble accessing grief?
Yes.
This is connected to the past. When you feel extreme grief, the body learns to numb itself against what is perceived as not being able to handle. When you lose something on a large scale, we do physically experience our heart breaking. That heartbreak makes it harder to feel fully in the future. We have to exercise the heart like a muscle and strengthen around it and give it stability and strength to fully feel again. What would you say feels like the opposite of grief?
Birth?
Grief sits in the lower chambers of the heart in the same way that insecurity sits in the lower chambers of the solar plexus. The higher chamber of the heart center is hope. Can you feel hope in the higher chamber of your heart? Love sits right in the center. When we love something or someone, we experience the exalted form of that as hope. And when we lose or experience a loss of hope surrounding that love, we feel grief in the lower chambers of the heart. We can strengthen the heart by allowing the center to hold both times of hope and grief, anchored in the love that created both. Even around grief, we can experience hope. This grief could also come back to us in rebirth, as you are saying. Birth. The love recycles and renews. There is a rebirth of hope. There are upper and lower chambers of every energy center, but this is too much for the channel to bring through right now.
These transmissions are for the future human, for the ones who feel the shift, who sense the children are different, who know the old paradigms can't hold what's coming.
This concludes today's transmission. Let what you've heard settle softly. The next begins when you are ready.